So we're going to jump in, and I want to set the stage. We're going to talk about automation for Jira. And for those of you who are not familiar or not as familiar with automation for Jira, I'm going to lay just a quick background. Automation for Jira was an application that was developed by a company called CodeBarrel, located in Australia. And they were purchased about a year or so ago by Atlassian. It has been an outstanding application, and then a lot of people were using it, and Atlassian really came along and said, we really should have this as a core part of our offering. And it is available on the cloud. If you have a cloud subscription, you have access to automation for Jira. If you're on server or data center, it is an app that you can get from the marketplace. And so it is available on all of the platforms. Now, I am going to not get into the details of automation for Jira. I'm going to assume, because we're going to talk about some more advanced kinds of things, I'm going to assume that you know the basics, but let me just sort of refresh for everybody so that we can have a basic level of understanding. So I've got a picture here of what a sample automation rule looks like. And a rule is made up of essentially three general components. The first component, as you see it right there, the when issue comment, is what we would call the trigger. This is what will cause the rule to start operating. And in this particular case, our trigger is when an issue is commented, this rule will run. Now, rules can be both project, limited to a specific project, or they can be global. So this rule could run on regardless across all projects whenever an issue is commented, or of course it can be, and it's more likely that you would want this particular rule to be at a project level. So when an issue within that project is commented, then do take this action. Now I want to point out to you as we go through how this rule is set up, that the name of it is reopen on comment. And the intention here is that we have a closed ticket, one that's been resolved, but somebody comes along and comments on this ticket, and so we want to reopen it. So we have our second piece, which is the conditions. And you can see we've got an if and an and statement. So these are two different conditions that are going to be checked. We're going to compare two values. We're going to say if the name of the status of the issue, the current status of the issue, is resolved, and the person who commented, that's the initiator, the person who actually generated the comment, is not in the employees group, then we're going to take an action. So this is our if statement, our conditions, and we can have complex conditions, we can have if then else conditions, but the idea basically is that a condition allows us to run this trigger only at on certain types of issues or issues that meet certain criteria. Finally, we have actions. What do we want to actually have happen? In this case, we're going to transition the issue to waiting for support. And we're going to I'm going to go through in more detail what are some of the actions that you may not be aware of if you're relatively new or you've just started using automation for Jira. I want to draw your attention to some of the more advanced things that it provides to you. But the thing that I'm going to start with, and where I want to focus over the next few minutes and the next several slides, is looking at this very odd looking piece in here. The two curly braces, issue.status.name, and then the two closed curly braces is a SMART value. And SMART values and understanding how to use SMART values is absolutely critical to being able to get to the next level of complexity and capability within automation for Jira. That's where we're going to spend the next several slides. So let's go ahead and bring up a first look at SMART values. As I pointed out, a SMART value, and I've highlighted in yellow all of the SMART values on this particular page, but SMART values always are enclosed in what they call a mustache format. Mustache being these two curly braces, be opening and closing. Within it, we then refer to some variable, something that exists in our environment that we want to display. In this case, we want to get the reporter for the current issue that we're working on, and we want to get their display name. Now, If we only said reporter, what we would get is the default value, and the default value in cloud, as many of you probably know, is that very ugly looking UUID that Atlassian generates as the username for every user. In order to get the actual display name, we have to then call for the display name attribute on this reporter object. So we're going to talk in terms of objects and attributes. The object is the first thing, and the attribute is what comes after it. Now, sometimes, as we'll see on our next slide, the attributes can now themselves be objects. But let's go ahead and take a little bit more closer look. Here, we've got issue.summary. Well, that should be pretty comfortable for you because we know that every issue must have a summary, and you just refer to it very simply by putting summary down here. These next two, though, if you'll notice, are two fields that are not standard fields in Jira. So we say we've got a department field, and we've got another field that's called initial category. These are two custom fields that we've created in Jira. And you'll notice that even though initial category, there's a space in here, we just simply refer to it by its name with the spaces and punctuation. So if you've created a custom field that has, say, a question mark at the end of its name, include the question mark in there. If you've got several words, and often we will use long labels as the names of our custom fields, go ahead and use that whole label in here. If it is easier, you can refer to these fields by their ID. That is to say, custom field underscore and then the number that follows it. We'll take a quick look at that a little bit later on. But the point here is that you can very easily refer to any custom field that you've created simply by saying issue dot and then the name of that custom field following it. So you can see I've got the issue key down here, and this then can be perhaps a comment or a ticket, an email that I send out as one of the actions that I have available to me in Automation for Jira is send an email. And so this could be the email that I want to send out to the person who opened it, and maybe this is an email I send out when I resolve a ticket, and I want my customer to come along and close it. And as you can see, I've formatted a URL here. And so this goes out to my reporter. Okay, so let's dive in. What I say are even smarter values than the smart values, just to show you some of the more complex things that we can do here. This is the same as what we saw before. In this case, we're going to the assignee and their display name. We saw issue.key, but here's one that's a little bit different. Issue.parent.key. Well, in this case, what I've done is I've said I'm going to use this as an email for subtasks. So you can see that this issue key has been created and assigned to you as a result of, and now I want to reference the parent of this issue. So I call .parent, and then I can call on it any of the fields associated with the parent issue. In this case, I'm going to return the key. In this case, I'm also going to return the summary. Now, as you can see here, here's the summary, but here's another one that looks a little bit different because I'm going to want to print the date, but I don't want to print the entire date with the time and the time zone information. All I want to print here is the date, and this medium date is one of about 20 different formats that I can apply to a date to show it in different ways. I can have a short date, which is just month/day/year. I can have a long date, which is spelled out all the way. I can have the full date and time. There are many different formats that I can put this in, and they are all documented very nicely in the Automation for Jira webpage. So I highly recommend that you become familiar with that if you're going to get into writing rules. So that's basically what I said is smarter values is understanding that what comes after this dot in the issue can be itself an object. It could be another issue like the parent. It could be a date field. And now we're going to look at one more type of smarter value, which is lists. In this particular case, I'm going to send an email to a manager field, again, a custom field. It's a user field, so I'm going to go ahead and use the display name here. And in this case, I want to send a list of all the comments that have been generated for this particular ticket. And the way I do that is I put a pound sign and then I call comments, which returns to me a list of comments. In the same way, if there are several other types of fields, several other types of fields that return lists. Fixed versions can be a list. Sprints can be a list. If you've got a multi-user picker, that's a list. If you've got multiple select list field, that's a list. Anything that can return to you a list of values can be referenced this way. And you've got a pound sign that starts an iteration over my list. That iteration is ended here in this by this slash. Everything in between the beginning of the list iteration and the slash will be executed one time for every object or every part of that list. In this case, it's going to be one time for every comment in the list. And what you can see then is that I can write out comment. Index is special. That actually will give me the number of the comment. If the first one will be 1, then 2, then 3, and so on for the number of comments that I've got on this particular ticket. Each comment then has an author, and here's their display name. Here is the date, and remember I said here I'm using the short date instead of the medium date or some other kind of date format. This will just give me a nice short date. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the body of the comment right here. So this then will iterate through and it will give me a list of the comments that are associated with this particular ticket. Okay, so we've looked at the smart values. What you will need to do is, in order to become more confident in using smart values, again, is to go back to the Automation for Jira web pages, because what you will find on there are dozens and dozens of functions that you can associate with this. So for instance, if you wanted to set the body, if you only wanted the first number of characters of the body, you can have a function that will limit how many characters come out. You can have on lists, you can say only give me the first item in the list, or only give me the last item in the list. For dates, you can actually convert dates. You can add two dates together. You can get the difference between dates, and so on. So there are a lot of different functions, and I'm not going to go into detail about all those. Again, I recommend that you look at the documentation that's available. Now, let's say that you want to know what's available to me to use and how do I reference it. Well, the way you would do that is you actually need to go, or you need to go and basically get the REST call, the return, by making a REST call to the get issue in Jira Cloud or Jira Server. Either one will return to you what you need to see. I'm using Postman, and if you're not familiar with Postman, it is a very capable and powerful way to execute REST commands for whatever it is you may be doing. So it's something that you can take a look at. But in this case, I'm using Postman, and I am executing this GET call to issue/cdf-4, and then I'm expanding the names. And what that does by expanding the names, this is I can't expand them here, but this actually gives me a list of the mapping of this custom field number to what its actual name is. So I can then quickly look and see that, oh, custom field 10111 is actually a field that I've created called resolution reason. And so that resolution reason maps here, and I could reference it in a smart value by either custom field _10111 or by giving the name of the field. And this shows me that it's a text field, and it shows me the comment. What you will find then as you go through the JSON file that's returned by the get issue command, just as I'm showing you a little section here, will be all of the different fields that are available to you and how they are represented. So when you see, for instance, a user, you will see that the user has a display name and an ID and an email address, and you'll be able to reference those. Knowing what's available to you then becomes, this is a way for you really to inspect all that. Okay, now let's go into triggers, because this is what I'd like you to, I want to expose you to things that you may not already be aware of. There are a raft of development tool triggers. And if you're looking for ways to automate the integration between Jira and Bitbucket, or Jira and some other tool like GitLab or GitHub, these triggers are invaluable to you. So you have a trigger for when a branch is created. This could be done based upon the branch gets created in Bitbucket, and this, or you create the branch in Jira and you want something to happen. When a pull request is created in Bitbucket, and whether it's created, declined, or merged, you could have something happen. For instance, you may want, when a pull request is merged, you may want the feature associated with that pull request, or the list of features associated with that pull request, to be automatically transitioned into ready for test or something like that. This will allow you to do that. Again, the same way we're merging or we're doing transitions on pull requests, we can do transitions on builds. Let's say I have a build that's failed. I may want to automatically transition my ticket back into a status to alert somebody that the build failed. Or if it's successful, I may want to change it into indicating that it was deployed. So this is, again, a way I can integrate with my development system. Commit created is pretty straightforward, and again, deployment failed or successful allows me to track that. So this allows me to automatically tie my development system back into Jira, and I can then reduce the amount of work and effort that my developers have to do keeping their up to date with their tickets. Most of my developers I want working in Bitbucket, which is where they're going to do all their source code control. They're going to be taking the code, branching the code, updating it, and then merging it back in, causing automatic deployments, that builds and deployments to happen. I would like them to spend as little time as possible in Jira, except during sprint planning, perhaps. Okay, so that's development tools. Few other things. You can create a manually triggered rule, and a manually triggered rule will allow you on any ticket that is associated with that rule, you'll be able to say, run this rule on this ticket. So why would you want to do that? Well, you might want a manual email send. You might want to have a manual update to something else, or cause subtasks to be created manually. It's a great way to test out your rules, because until you have made sure that it works exactly the way you want it to, you just keep pushing that manual button and letting the rule run and checking for what happens on the rule until you're satisfied. You can also schedule rules to run. So you may want to schedule something so that every night you'll send out a list of the current sprint information, or you may want to send out a list of tickets that match a certain criteria. Now, you can do that certainly with subscriptions, but there are other ways that you might be able to manipulate that in your automation for Jira rules. So again, being able to schedule rules to run can be very useful. You can also have a trigger based on when an SLA threshold is breached, and this only applies if you're using Jira Service Management. But if you're using a Jira Service Management project, SLA breaching can be a very powerful way to send out notifications. So one thing that we do regularly with SLA thresholds is we will create SLAs based upon that start when a ticket is first resolved. So when the ticket is resolved, we will start an SLA that says if it expires within 3 days and our end customer hasn't done anything, we will send the end customer an email. And we will have another SLA that sends them, say, a second email at the end of, say, 6 days. And if they haven't responded by the end of 7 days, we're going to close the ticket. And these are all run on the SLA breached trigger. Sprints created, started, and completed are other triggers you can use, as well as webhooks. And this is where I'm going to conclude, because I'm going to go into some detail about how webhooks can be a powerful way to create ad hoc integration between Jira and other systems that may be important to you. So I want to show that piece to you now. Okay, so what I've done is I'm going to look first at an outgoing webhook. This is a web request that we're going to send based upon a trigger or that may come along. So in this particular case, I've said that when this rule runs, the action I want to take is to send a web request. What I have done is I have created a very simple, in order to test this and show you the output, I've created a very simple REST API in AWS Lambda. And that's all that's sitting there. So this is the URL that points to that REST API. You're more than welcome to try it yourself if you want to copy that down, but it doesn't do very much. It just returns pretty much whatever's been sent to it. I say that the content type I'm sending is a JSON file. I'm posting to this REST API, and I'm going to send custom data. Now, I didn't need to send custom data. I can also send the issue payload. Now, remember when we did that get issue, when we looked at that in Postman, I can actually send that piece simply by setting the webhook body to be issue data, in which case the REST API is going to get the entire set of issue data. So I decided for my purposes, I wasn't interested in getting this huge JSON file, which represents everything on the issue. I only wanted a few pieces of information. And so here's my JSON file that I have specified right in the action, the definition of the action in the rule. I'm going to send the key, the summary, the reporter, and the assignee. Now, when I set this up, by the way, notice I sent reporter and assignee. I didn't put their display names in. That was, you're going to see, that was a mistake. And I'll show you why right now. So what happens when this runs? Well, what I want to have happen is after the REST API runs, I want to take the results of that and I want to put it into a comment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the raw data. The webhook response.body is actually the body that is returned to me by my REST API. So imagine for a moment that I'm going to send a REST API out to another system. Say I'm sending it out, my ticketing system is now sending it out to a billing system. And that billing system is going to send me back some kind of useful information that I want to capture. Well, I capture it by looking at the webhook response.body. I'm then going to print out the status, the API version, the summary, and the reporter. This is all being returned by my REST API. So let's see what gets returned. This is actually the comment that gets created. You can see the raw data is returned to me as a JSON file. I can then refer to it by calling webhook response.body, and then I can go ahead and call the actual attributes in here. Status is status code, the API version. You can see them right here. Status code, the API version, and in this, and the summary, and here's the reporter. And this is why I say it was a mistake not to put display name here when I set it up, because all you're seeing here is the ID of the reporter. Not a very useful piece of information. Okay, so, and you can see that I had to dip into the received. The received itself is a dictionary. Here I have body.received.summary, body.received.reporter, because that's what it happens. My REST API is I simply return the contents that were sent to it in this received dictionary right here. Okay, so that's an outgoing. This is how you would send a message to an external system that exposes a REST API. Most of your systems are going to expose REST APIs, or most modern systems do, and so it's going to be a very convenient way for you to be able to send out a webhook, and it's more powerful than the built-in webhook capabilities that are right in standard Jira, because you can determine exactly what you're going to send. And unlike the regular Jira, which is fairly inflexible, automation for Jira provides you a very flexible way to send information to an external system. So let's look at being able to have Jira receive information from an external system. So in this case, what I did was I said I would like to be able to receive work logs that are going to come in from an external system. So for a moment, imagine your developers and are all using some external time management system, but you would like to capture their time in Jira as work log entries. So in this case, what we do is we create a new rule, and in this case, an incoming webhook is the trigger. This is what triggers the rule to actually start. Jira is going to give us a URL. This is a unique URL. This is special to our specific webhook, and it's unique. And we're going to copy this, and we're going to use this as the basis for sending to Jira. What am I going to do with it? Well, I have some options. I can say process any call that comes in on the issues that are actually mentioned in the body of the post, or I can use a query parameter of issue equals, and then I can specify an issue right in the URL. I could say when it comes in, look at all the issues that match a certain JQL search. And that would allow me then to say, to apply it to a whole set of issues based on, I kept hitting that, based upon a JQL. And then, of course, the last one is I might want to do something that has nothing to do with issues at all. And I can then say, don't apply it to any issues. Just go ahead and take the next action, whatever that may happen to be. In this case, I'm applying it to an issue that's going to come in on the URL. And let's see what that looks like. So now what I've said is, what do I want to do? I want to use an action called log work, and this creates a work log, just as you would expect. And in this case, I've gone ahead and I've said, I know that I'm going to get in the webhook data segment, I'm going to get minutes. And I'm going to specify here with the M that I want it to know that I'm getting a number of minutes to populate. I'm going to go ahead and say that the date that it is whatever date came in. And finally, I'm going to say put in a description, and the description is what comes in the webhook. And this will allow me then to automatically log work. Now you can imagine all sorts of uses for this. One, an example that I can give you is that you may have a ticket that is an HR onboarding, and one of the things that needs to be done is to send a message to an external system to create a user. And that may be what we would call an asynchronous call. That is to say, I send the message, that user is now queued up to be created, but it may not be created immediately. And instead of me having to sit and wait for it to come back, I simply give it a webhook. And when that external system creates the user, it then calls the webhook with that user ID information, and it allows me to populate it right back into the issue where it's appropriate. I might use that for all sorts of other reasons that I want an external system to be able to trigger something to happen in Jira. Automation for Jira gives me the ability to do that and to use the incoming data in various ways. Again, these are all built upon smart values, and you can do much more complex manipulations of smart values than what I've shown you here. So you have a lot of control to do many, many things without having to write any code at all, without having to get in and doing any fancy groovy. You can do it all within automation for Jira using the smart values and these capabilities. So with that, I'm going to open it up for any questions that you may have. I'm happy to answer questions about what I've talked about here or anything else that you may have in your mind.
Great job, Derek. And now would be a good time to use that Q&A box. If you have a question, feel free to type in your question, and we'll get to it. And in the meantime, Derek, let me ask you: are there such thing as template libraries? Because I know that you've done a number of these, and of course, it really depends on the specific requirements. But I would suspect that once you do something, it might be similar to another customer's requirements. Do we keep sort of a library of different automation scenarios that we put together? Are they reusable, I guess is the question, right?
They are reusable. There are ways to export your rules, so we can do that. Atlassian has actually built up now, and it has available in the cloud a whole template library that you can use as the basis for beginning to write your own automation rules. And that can be a very valuable resource to pull from.
Wow. Okay, so that's going to save a huge amount of time, because chances are there's something in there that you're going to be able to reuse. Is that?
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. How long does it take? I mean, again, I guess that the answer is going to depend upon, well, what the specific requirements are. But you mentioned that there's really low code or no code. Let's say that you have an onboarding application, which might be pretty standard kind of a thing, and you wanted to set that up so first day somebody signs up, and you have all these different things that they have to do. Is that would that be a couple days project, or again, that's probably a tough one to answer. Any thoughts about that?
Well, again, as you say, it's a little tough to answer, but the complexity really isn't automation for Jira makes it much less complex. The complexity is how do you interface or interact with those external systems, and that's where all the complexity really comes in. We do something very straightforward, and again, automation for Jira makes this very simple, is to create a set of subtasks associated with all those different onboarding activities that need to happen, and then assign them to whatever group or person needs to do them. And automation for Jira makes it very, very easy for us on a particular trigger based upon some values that may have been selected in the initial request to know which subtasks to create, who to assign them to, and so on. And that only takes that's a day, a day or 2 days of work. That's really not much time at all.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds good. There's a question here. Is this primarily used for API automated testing?
No, I would say it's not primarily used for that at all, though it certainly can be, but it's used primarily to be able to integrate Jira with external systems for whatever purpose you may have. I would not, testing is certainly one, and it's a really nice one to set up, but by no means is that would be the only use case where it would be appropriate. I'll just give you an example of something we're working on right now. We are looking at integrating Jira with a phone telephony provisioning system, where the user will come to the portal, the JSM portal, and request a new phone. That will automatically send a message to a telephony provisioning system that will then manage the provisioning of that phone in the network, so that the user then can use it and get all sorts of different services. So there's an example of where the integration is really useful, and has really nothing to do with testing.
Okay. What's very popular in the IT space right now is AI, machine learning, and also RPA, or robotic process automation. And so this is kind of like RPA in a sense, right? I don't know that there's anything that the system would learn, but it certainly gives you the utilities to go out, or the tools to go out there and build something, and that's again reusable, and really makes life a lot easier.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, that looks like that is it for questions. Is there anything else that you can think of, Derek? Any parting thoughts or anything else here?
I have one parting thought, and it's really on a completely different subject. And I just wanted to put in a pitch. I think we've gone to the first and third Thursdays of every month. We are doing an Atlassian Ask Me Anything session, and that is open for any questions that people may have about any Atlassian topic or product. And there is a sign-up form that you can reach. It's ask@rightstar.com, I believe, and you can sign up right there if you want to participate in an Ask Me Anything session. So I just want to let people know about that as well.
Okay, and once you go to the next, is there another slide after this one?
Right, this one.
Yeah, okay. So if you want to contact RightStar, if you need more information about anything, whether it's RPA or automation for Jira, or anything else that has to do with Jira or Confluence or Bitbucket or any one of those tools, feel free to give us a call or email or go to the website and fill out a form. So there's a lot of different ways that you can contact us, and we certainly really appreciate you taking your time this afternoon to sign on. And thank you, Derek. Once again, it was a very good job. So I know we do these things on a regular basis, or if you want, just go to the Ask Me Anything if you have other questions, and you'll get your answer. So again, thanks everybody for your attendance today. We're excited that you could join us. We'll see you the next time. Again, Derek, thanks to you, and we'll go ahead and sign off now. So,
thank you.
Signing off.